5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
This is the Culture Clash.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Culture Clash Live. This is actually episode 225 of Culture Clash, combining live episodes and pre-recorded episodes. Can't believe we've made it this far, but we have a very fun episode. We're trying a little something new. We got a new segment for you this week. We're calling the franchise, where we're going to be taking a look at a franchise in movies and TV, kind of talk about what its place in history is, talk about the franchise in general, and answer some questions and give our reviews of it. But we are going to do a major franchise this week, and I can't do it alone. I need a good wheelman with me, and I can't think of a better man than, of course, my brother from another mother, the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Ace himself, Kevin Reitzel.
Meow. Meow. Oh, meow.
Now, I can't tell if that was your 4-liter engine or you just have a bad cat meow.
Well, it's definitely a 4-liter because that did not sound like a 6-liter. Dude, I'm holding up the Fast and Furious, the Ultimate Ride Collection. This came out after, I think it was 8 or after 7 came out.
Yeah, 7.
So what's funny about this one is that you open it up, right? And you got all the DVDs inside, and then you go back and you look at the disc, and there's a little spot here that says, "This space reserved for Fate and the Furious, sold separately, coming 2017." And so you add it to your collection here. Of course, at this time, I don't know if they thought that we would be at 10, going on even more than that. So
yeah, that is very true. And you said it yourself. We're going to take everybody on a Furious podcast today.
I see what you did there.
For our first edition of the franchise, we will be looking at the franchise that is the Fast and the Furious, tying in with, of course, the release of Fast 10, which just came out, premiered last night, but today is the official opening day for it.
You and I have both seen it.
We have both seen it. I don't know if we're better for it or not, but we have both seen it.
Yes.
But before we get into anything else, Kevin, we got a little something to take care of. So
Let's news.
So a little bit of breaking news yesterday. It's been a busy week for Disney. They've had their upfronts going on. They've been making some major announcements. We're going to get into those. But Kevin, I think the biggest one was this. Disney is closing less than 2 years after opening it, the Galactic Star Cruiser experience. I honestly can't say I'm surprised by this. This has not been exactly a success for Disney, Kevin.
This is true. Why are you not surprised?
The reviews on it haven't been that great, and when you add in the price of the experience, I don't think a lot of people can truly afford what Disney was charging for this experience right now. I think Disney got caught up in the aftermath of COVID and the way the economy is right now, Kevin. $5,000 is a lot to ask of anybody to drop down on any kind of experience these days.
Do you think it was just the cost? Because I don't.
I agree with you. I don't either. I think that the early reviews on this, I think Disney rushed it out. I think this was one of the biggest flubs in Disney history. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I would have considered finding a way to spend that amount of money if it looked like Star Wars that I wanted to experience. To me, this didn't feel like Star Wars. And, I knew some people that did some of the media press stuff, and they were very excited about it. But, when you don't include some of the most iconic Star Wars settings, Star Wars characters, and you just kind of stick it into a little corner that is the the sequels, and try to sell us on this cruiser that's Star Warsy, and just throw in an astromech or aging Chewbacca and some First Order officers and stormtroopers. I'm sorry. I just rather go down to Hollywood and check out the Scum and Villainy bar. That feels Star Wars. So if it kind of went towards that direction, I think it might have hit the people that have exposable income, and might have been more catering to the general Star Wars fans, because who wouldn't want to go to, like, a room that was like kind of like, I don't know, like Cloud City, or a cantina room, or something that felt a little more Star Wars. Even if you want to go to the sequel trilogy, go to one of those worlds for a little bit or something. But trying to sell it as a Starship Cruise thing felt more Star Trek to me, to be honest with you. And I love Star Trek, but if I'm going to do this, I want to pay for Star Wars. And I want to feel like I'm in Star Wars.
I completely agree with you. A lot of the pictures I saw, even though like the one we're looking at now, it felt too clean to be Star Wars. It looked like it's something from the Federation, not necessarily something from
Star Wars. Star Wars needs to feel lived in. It needs to feel worn. It needs to feel like, people have been around for a while. And I had no attachments to the whatever characters they were trying to push on us in the situation, and so I don't know. I hope that they can repurpose it and maybe do something different with it. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it's kind of sad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's sad because I'm going to be honest with you. I think Disney has dropped the ball a lot on the theme park side of Star Wars. There's aspects of Galaxy Edge I love, and I love the ideas behind it. The main rides there are fun, but I'm with you, Kevin, in the aspect of Disney has pigeoned themselves into a corner with Galaxy's Edge and with this Galactic Star Cruiser, so focused on one set point in time in Star Wars. Yeah. And you're not appealing to all the fans of Star Wars. And I think that was a major miscalculation on their part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's been, like I said, it's been a busy week for Disney because we got a little bit of other Disney news. One thing I didn't put in the notes, Kevin, but Disney is starting to change some of their streaming methods as well. They are dropping several shows off of Disney Plus over the next few weeks. So a lot of shows that really could probably run their course. They weren't any of the main. I think the biggest name that I saw in the stuff that's getting removed is season 1 of Willow, which we already know is canceled. So it seems like Disney's kind of trimming a little bit of the fat out of Disney Plus right now, Kevin.
Well, what else was listed? What else?
It was several shows that they only had one season. And some movies that it felt like they were on kind of the fringe.
What about Agent Carter that had 2? Do you know if that's still a thing?
I think I did not see any Marvel or Star Wars things that were on the list to be removed from Disney Plus, and that makes sense. This was more like some Disney original stuff for the most part, things of that nature. But speaking of the Marvel side of Disney, we did have a couple of major announcements as far as Plus shows. Obviously, we have Secret Invasion coming the 21st of July or June, which Kevin, I know you and I are both very excited.
Excited about that, yes.
Loki season 2, Kevin, will be starting on October 6th. I know a lot of people are excited about this. I think this is going to be one of the more interesting shows, obviously, because I think a lot of people really love Loki season 1. I know it didn't sit completely that great with you or I. There were some issues we had with it. And obviously, Kevin, the elephant in the room is the Jonathan Majors situation. He is a big part of Loki season 2 from everything I've read. So I'm going to be curious to see how that plays out. But that wasn't the only Marvel announcement as well, because on the 29th of December, every single episode of Echo will drop. Not just a week as weekly. They're doing a Netflix-style drop of the entire show, which is a big change from anything we've ever seen on Disney Plus. But Kevin, these are 2 pretty big announcements on this. So I was curious of your thoughts of what's going on with these.
Well, as for Loki, I'm not as excited as I probably would have been, especially after the events of Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and whatever happened with Jonathan Majors' personal life. That's a different thing there. But I don't know what they're planning on doing. Maybe if I get another trailer or something, we'll see. But I'm not excited for that. I'm very curious, though, of course, about Echo. But there's some speculation that they think that they don't. Fans are saying, "Oh, why are they all dropping all the episodes at once?" and blah blah blah. Does that mean, they don't have faith in this series and they're just kind of trying to, if they drop it all at once? I was starting to think, well, does that mean then they're going to try to squeeze in another show after that before the end of the year to make it into the Marvel calendar? Because that's really the only thing I could think of without it going, you know what, this show's, it's done. We're not going to do a second season. We don't know what we're doing with this character. Let's just drop it all at once and see about moving on and filling up the calendar or something else sooner. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a combination of a couple of things, actually, Kevin. First and foremost, I'm looking at the date that this is being released, and it's coming out November 29th. I have a feeling because of just the holiday season, Disney doesn't necessarily want to have this show running through the holiday season. And by doing it this way, they get it all out so people can kind of watch it at their own leisure during the holiday season instead of having a weekly show to watch during the holiday season. But I'm going to be honest with you too. I do think that there is an aspect of this to where maybe this show seems to have been kind of lost in the shuffle of the MCU. And I'm kind of wondering if they just don't have a lot of confidence in it. There's been this rumored to be out earlier. It was going to be maybe not until 2024. So I think they're dropping it here because they know of the time frame they've got, because there is a Daredevil is part of this show, and I know they want to have this out before Daredevil Born Again comes out.
Right.
We're still looking right now. We're still on pace for Daredevil Born Again, probably sometime in 2024, but we'll wait and see on that. But I just kind of wonder if this is also a little bit of what's going on with what I've seen and read about with the MCU, where they're kind of slowing things down and realizing we need to start putting out better quality than quantity. And I really think that's one of the changes Bob Iger has brought in since he's come back. We had a lot of stuff come out under the Bob Chapek watch. And I think Kevin Feige and Bob Iger have realized, hey, maybe not so. We need to work on our quality more than we need to work on our quantity. And I think it's the right move.
Well, maybe it's part of the whole budget thing and them cutting back on certain things. You might see more team ups, instead of individual shows. I don't know. I'm kind of curious. To me, I'm just like, give me Wolverine and Deadpool 3 and give me Mutants and Fantastic Four. Just get there. Just do it.
We're getting closer to Fantastic Four, and there are a lot of rumors that Loki season 2 might actually have some ties to Deadpool 3. And it might
That's the first I've heard of that.
Well, Miss Minutes is supposed to be in Deadpool 3. So that might be the explanation of how they pulled Deadpool into the MCU. Is that whole organization. So gotcha. It'll be interesting to find out. But there is another Disney show that we got kind of news on. The show that I think most everybody is looking forward to on the Star Wars side of thing is Star Wars Ahsoka. Was it a leak? Was it intentional? Was it somebody making something up? But a couple days ago on the net, there was all kinds of people jumping on a August 31st release date. Something had appeared on one of the Disney websites that was pulled down rather quickly. So is it legit? Is it not? We've all been hearing August is sometime for Ahsoka. So this would make sense, August 31st, especially when you consider the time window of when Echo might drop and how many, if Ahsoka is 8 week, let's just say an 8 episode series. I haven't heard an official episode count for Ahsoka. Have you, Kevin?
I have not. I just think it's funny. I was expecting it sooner in the summer. I mean, August 31st basically is the end of summer and the beginning of fall, if you think, because September's right there, So, I don't know. 8 maybe, I guess, is what I was guessing. I don't know. That's kind of what Mandalorian's been doing. Please don't just do 6. God, I hate that.
Yeah. 6 is not enough for Ahsoka. We need to get at least 8.
Yeah. But
Kevin, there is one other thing before we in news that I want to kind of just have a quick conversation with you about before we jump into our main show segment. Since the last time we recorded Culture Clash, the writer's strike has begun. And we are already starting to see some of the effects. A lot of shows and movies have stopped production because of the writer's strike, because a lot of actors and other organizations are standing tall with the writers and with the situation. Kevin, I have a feeling we had the writer's strike a while ago now, probably back in the early 2000s was probably the most major one. And I remember it specifically because Nathan Fillion was on Desperate Housewives at the time, but he came to a convention in Orlando, and that's how I got his autograph. And a buddy of mine were talking to him. It's like, you're here because of the writer's strike. And he kind of like him and Todd and kind of gave us the wink because he couldn't really say anything. But yeah, and Kevin, I have a sneaking suspicion he might be in for the long haul on
Was that when Heroes was coming out in the second
that's
season?
when Heroes got completely ruined because of the writer's strike.
Yeah, that was the second season. It just started to go. Yeah. And the famous one happened also, of course, in was it the late 80s, early 90s? We had that one as well. Yeah, this one could be nasty. It could last quite a while. So yeah, I guess you're going to have to start going back and streaming and watching some films that you've been meaning to catch up on. And you know, a friend of mine on Facebook, I don't want to say his name, but he put a nice post out there supporting the writer's strike, and he was showing himself in the picket line, and he'd also said, and I think actually one of us in the Fandom Podcast Network also expressed the same opinion. One of our friends in the network said, don't watch reality shows because you're probably going to see a lot more of those because of less not having to use writers and stuff like that. So if you really want to support the writer's strike, there's certain measures that you can do and take if you feel like you should.
Yeah, I think the interesting aspect of the writer's strike this time around too, Kevin, is it's really over several things, but the two interesting things that stand out the most is obviously streaming, because streaming isn't related to Nielsen ratings like cable television is, and so these guys don't get accurate streaming numbers. And hello to the Lethal Mall himself, at Mr.
What's up, Adam?
Excuse me. So I think that's a hanging point. And I find it interesting, Kevin, because it seems like this has been a growing thing in the last about 6 weeks, but AI has become a really hot topic here, and the aspect of AI writing some scripts. And the technology is working fast and furious, and they're advancing this AI pretty quickly to where they're able to probably get close to at least getting a pretty good outline for scripts out of AI. And it's interesting to see how that's going to affect that too, because many writers are actually worried about, am I going to get replaced by AI?
Yeah, this is my brain hasn't wrapped itself around this. I know AI through visual media, but for scripts and writing, I just don't know how that works. So this concept is blowing me away.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. I'm going to recommend one actually for people, AI for Humans with Kevin Pereira. It's a really good one. It's covering a lot of what's going on with AI right now. I got to ask Kevin, a Canberra Raiders jersey?
Yeah, Adam is there in the chat there. The Canberra is the rugby team there in Australia, or one of them anyway, and they're the Canberra Raiders. And so Adam knows I'm going to be visiting Australia soon. I'm leaving on the 28th of May, be gone through the 18th, and looking forward to getting down there. And by the way, our good friend Blair Hiscock there, from the old Brizzy area, he's going to be coming down for a couple of days to visit. So we're going to hang out and do some nerdy video stuff. So yeah,
I see the words JB Hi-Fi in your future.
This is true, but we're also going to be visiting a famous Blu-ray DVD store that is really, really cool for video nerds. So yeah, we're going to be having some fun.
Very cool. Well, with that, it's time to get into our main section of this episode of Culture Clash, our new thing. It's time to discuss the franchise. So, as I said a little bit at the top of the show, this is a new segment for Culture Clash. We're going to pick a franchise, kind of ask questions about it, go over the history of the movies, talk a little bit about the movies.
But also, hold on, we also might target a television series too.
Yeah, there could be a family of television series. Just we might talk about like the Buffyverse or something like that. You just never know what we might do here at the Culture Clash. But this first one seems significant since a major motion picture opened up this weekend. Fast 10 has come out, Kevin. Gonna be honest with you, I never thought we'd see 10 for Fast and Furious. It has been an interesting ride.
Well, hold on. You thought you wouldn't see Fast 10 after 9 or Fast 10 after 1? I mean,
we're going to talk about that. But yes, we are going to be talking a little Fast and the Furious here. We're going to be going over the films of the franchise, the importance of the franchise, the history of the franchise, and some of our own thoughts on the franchise. But Kevin, it all starts with one thing. And that is family, the theme of the Fast and the Furious. Here we see a shot of a lot of the main players over the years in the Fast and the Furious. Before we get started, Kevin, I'm going to ask you: when did you jump onto the Fast and Furious franchise? Was it right away, or was it something you kind of got into a little later?
Oh, it was right away. I remember seeing the trailer for the movie, the first film. I don't remember what movie I saw the trailer in while I was watching it, but I was like, okay, this looks cool. Fast cars, LA, and I didn't know who a lot of these people were at the time. I remember Paul Walker from what was it? She's All That, and some other stuff, But Vin Diesel I'd heard of course. But it just looked cool, car racing and stuff like that. So yeah.
For me, I think I jumped on it a little bit later. I think I kind of got onto it with Fast 2, and I had seen Fast 2 on cable, and I kind of liked it. I remember when Fast and Furious came out, it was kind of in the news a lot because there's all controversy about it was causing people to street race and drive dangerously and all that.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So, I wasn't sure about it, but it has become a franchise that has definitely made its mark in Hollywood. So, without further ado, let's dive into the movie that started it all, Kevin. The Fast and the Furious, coming out in 2001, directed by Rob Cohen, written by Gary Scott Thompson. Los Angeles police officer Brian O'Connor must decide where his loyalty really lies when he becomes enamored with the street racing world he has been sent undercover to destroy. Little did we know a little movie about street racing would eventually turn into what it has turned into, Kevin.
Yes. Now, I did want to ask you, before we cover all the films, you have a guideline of what we're going to be talking about with the films, the questions that we're going to ask. Do we want to kind of go over those first before we go through all the films? So as people are watching or listening to this, they can keep these questions in mind while we're doing that.
Yeah. So some of the key questions we're going to be asking after we kind of go through the history of the franchise is: what was the apex of this franchise? What was the low point? When did the franchise, as they say, jump the shark?
Are those intertwined? Possibly, you think?
They possibly could, but sometimes you have a franchise where you've had a really bad movie, but it rebounds with a sequel, but then something happens along the way and it just goes off the rails. So it could be a difference between the low point and where the franchise just went off the rails. So, who is the heart of the franchise? I think this is going to be a very interesting question. What is our personal favorite film of the franchise, and which one do we consider our guilty pleasure film of the franchise? And as we close out, we're going to ask: does this franchise need to keep going? Does it need to be brought to a close? Does it need to be rebooted? Or in the case of a franchise that has ended, does it need to be brought back? We are also going to rate the franchise, and we've got a few different rating systems here. Top of the list: is it a tentpole franchise? That would be a franchise that would carry a studio. This is a studio franchise that makes buku money. It's something that they've built a world around, things of that nature. I will see it in the theater. This might not be a must-see go opening night kind of thing for you, but you definitely want to see it on that big screen because of the way the franchise is. I can wait to stream it. You like it, but it's not that important to you, but you'll watch it when you come out. You can stream it at home in the comfort of your own living room. It's not my thing, but there is something for everyone. You know what? Personally, maybe we didn't like it, but we know there are people out there who are fans of it. And of course, finally, what? They made more than one? Shouldn't we have just killed it before it was allowed to spawn? I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
So, again, we go back to 2001, Mr. Reitzel. We have a little movie come out called The Fast and the Furious, directed by Rob Cohen, written by Gary Scott Thompson. As we said, Brian O'Connor must decide where his loyalties lie between his police work and his new family of street racers. What were your thoughts on this film when you saw it for the first time, Kevin?
I thought it was great because it touched on a subculture that had been around for a long time in LA area. And I remember watching a film while we were covering 1981 and kind of forgetting the name of it, but it starred Harry Hamlin. And forgive the name of it, it came out in 81 and it was about streetcar racing in LA. And it's always been around, and it touched on the illegal side of it. And so this was just like a newer version of that. And I love the idea of it, and the fact that they also were thieves, to kind of, you know, in a way, when you think about it, it's like Point Break, where they're stealing stuff to support their habit of racing.
Mm-hmm.
Where Point Break, they rob banks to support their traveling and surfing.
Mm-hmm.
And but what really made this movie though is the characters. If you don't have these cool, interesting characters, and working together and creating this bond, or what is the other phrase I'm looking for? Creating a, I don't know, family.
A unit of some kind.
Family, is that what it's called?
Yeah, there you go. Family.
Yeah. So I was sucked in right away. And and what's funny about each of these films, there's always like some type of racing scene with like hot girls walking around the cars. Obligatory, but a must have.
Absolutely. Like I said, I didn't see this in the theaters. I saw it on cable for the first time, and it was better than I thought it was going to be, and I found it enjoyable. Obviously, you have a lot of our main characters who run through most of the series. Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor, Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto, Michelle Rodriguez as Letty, Jordana Brewster as Mia Toretto, a couple other names, Matt Schultz as Vince, who appeared in a couple of the other films. Interesting thing, because one of the things that Fast and Furious has always done is managed to get rappers or musicians as part of their cast. It started as a tradition in the original Fast and Furious. Kevin, as Ja Rule was in this movie as the character Edwin in the beginning of the film.
I remember that.
So no, I really enjoyed this movie, and I think, Kevin, like you said, it came down to the characters, and there was something obviously magnetic about Vin Diesel, and of course, I find me somebody who hated Paul Walker, because even though you might not have liked all the movies he was in, he may not have made the best choices for movies. There was something about that guy that just was completely likable. So
he's good looking. He had a great smile. He was just very, very charming. And I did want to mention too, a few blocks away from my house, he owned a house here in Santa Barbara, and it was like a block away from the beach. And but everyone treated him as just a normal guy, and that's why a lot of celebrities like to live in this area, because as cool as we like that there's celebrities around here, they don't get the the Hollywood rush of fans trying to bug them and hound them and stuff like that. And he was just and his house wasn't a big house. It was just like a 2-bedroom house, maybe 2-bathroom, and he lived there with his daughter Willow, who had a cameo in the newest film, by the way.
Yeah, yes, she did. I remember reading about that. Adam O'Brien said, "Fast with Duncan Idaho. He's trying to get a little spicy Dune stuff in here," as Jason Momoa was in Fast 10. We do recognize that fact, but we did get a sequel in 2003, Too Fast, Too Furious, directed by John Singleton. Yes, that John Singleton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A bit of a change up here. Change of location from Los Angeles to Miami. No Vin Diesel in this movie. This again written by Gary Scott Thompson. Former cop Brian O'Connor is called upon to bust a dangerous criminal, and he recruits the help of a former childhood friend and street racer who has a chance to redeem himself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kevin, I remember seeing this movie, and I remember they kind of played the audience a little bit, because they thought he was going to go see a prisoner, and everybody thought it was going to be Vin. But nope. Instead, it was Tyrese Gibson as the fun-loving Roman Pierce introduced to the franchise. But we had a few other key cast members introduced as well, including the gorgeous Eva Mendes as Monica Fuentes in this movie. Kevin, the first time she was on screen, I just kind of may have lost it and may have had a late second round of puberty, because
Eva Mendes was making the rounds. I think she got a little notice when she was in the Miami video with Will Smith, and then of course she ended up doing a film with him later on called Hitch. So yeah, she was up and coming. Gorgeous.
Yeah. Cole Hauser, yes, that Cole Hauser from Yellowstone was our villain, Carter Verone.
Mm-hmm.
And continuing our tradition of musicians, and one who became a fixture in the Fast and Furious movies, Chris Ludacris Bridges as Tej.
Yep.
One of our favorites, Kevin, the great James Remar, was Agent Markham in this. And of course, Devon Aoki as Suki, who made an appearance in a few of the Fast films early on.
Yes. This one for me, Devon Aoki.
Yeah.
Big fan of hers. And I love her car in this, and might have crushed on her a little bit too. I don't know if this is people's favorite film, but Too Fast, Too Furious has its moments. Some good car races in as well, but I love the fact that the Furious films would bring these characters in later and become the main characters of the family to kind of validate this film. Because a lot of people were thinking for a while that this was not the best film of the series. It's more watchable when you return to it now that you see all of these characters have come back, except for Devin Aoki. I'd like to see her come back someday. That'd be nice. But yes, but Kyle, there is another film, by the way, that you have not mentioned that technically not particularly is part of the franchise, but it could be. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but should we discuss that before we talk about our next film or after we talk about our next film?
Let's talk about the next film, because I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I believe I do. But of course, we are going to be talking about the next in the franchise, another change of direction for the franchise, but has some key things in it. The 2006 Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Now, this film really takes it in a different direction, because not only was there no Vin Diesel in the starring role, no Paul Walker in the starting role, instead it was Lucas Black in the starring role. But Kevin, a big thing about this film, Justin Lin joined the Fast franchise as the director, and that is going to be of very big importance as we go on. But let's get into Tokyo Drift a little bit here. An American teenager named Sean Boswell is a loner in school. However, he challenged his rival for an illegal street race, and he totals his car in the end of the race. To avoid time in prison, he is sent to Tokyo to live with his father, who is in the military. As soon as he arrives, he discovers a new, fun, but dangerous way of street racing in the underworld of the streets of Tokyo, Japan. Now, some interesting new characters brought into this film. Obviously, the big one is Sung Kang as Han, and a lot of people's favorite character, and justice for Han. I'm just saying. Lucas Black as Sean Boswell. Keeping our musicians at the time, Lil Bow Wow, Shad Moss as Twinkie. We had Kikyo Kitagawa as Rieko, and Brian T as DK, aka the Drift King.
Yes.
I've got a few little notes about this particular film, though, Kevin.
Please do.
After poor test screenings, Universal Pictures, they didn't ask, they begged Vin Diesel to make a cameo to boost its box office potential. Diesel agreed to appear in if Universal would relinquish the rights to Riddick to him. Diesel was then able to make Riddick in 2013 independently. I think that deal worked out very well for Vin.
Yes.
Furious 7 would later reveal that the race between Dom, Vin Diesel, and Sean Lucas Black was won by Dom. Okay, now, Kevin, the next one. Do we want to talk about your other movie now? Before I
now's the time. Yep.
So I can't think of the name of it, but I know we've had this discussion about this movie.
Yeah, I got it. So let me go a little back here. So before Fast 7 or 8 came out, I decided to go back and do a full rewatch of the Fast and Furious films. And with Justin Lin now being part of the franchise and directing a few of these films, I was and Han becoming one of my favorite characters, because the one thing I was enjoying seeing him in the films that we're going to talk about here, but then I was getting a little depressed knowing that, damn, he supposedly dies here in this film, Tokyo Drift, which, for the record, I saw in the theater. Love the soundtrack, by the way. And I will go to bat for this film. I think it's
you and me both.
I love this film. It stands on its own, but I love the ties to it, and when we come back around to it. But Justin Lin directed a film called Better Luck Tomorrow. And Better Luck Tomorrow came out in 2002, right around when Fast and Furious was coming out, right? And it is about and Sung Kang is one of the stars in this, and it's about a group of overachieving East Asian American high school seniors enjoy a power trip when they dip into extracurricular criminal activities. And when you look into the trivia, it says this marks the first appearance of the character Han, because that's the name he goes by in that movie. just before Justin Lin introduced him in Fast and the Furious series with Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. Although this film is not officially part of the series, the Han from this movie is a chain smoker, and in the Fast and the Furious, he is consistently eating chips due to kicking his smoking habit, and is so meant to be the same character. So if you were to ask Justin or Sung Kang about this character, they think that this movie, Better Luck Tomorrow, actually is a Han prequel because it fits right in there. The director agrees with it. The star agrees with it. So if you want to watch a little backstory on Han himself, watch Better Luck Tomorrow. I actually have it on DVD.
So that leads into the final piece of information I have from Tokyo Drift. The events in this film were later retconned to chronologically take place after the events of the later films Fast and Furious, Fast 5, and Fast and Furious 6. Vin Diesel shows up in a cameo in the final scene saying he rolled with Han. Han leaves to return to Tokyo at the end of Fast and Furious 6, which takes place sometime before Tokyo Drift. Furious 7 occurs almost simultaneously with Tokyo Drift and reuses some archived material.
Yep.
Now, Kevin, we need to take a quick stop here because after Tokyo Drift, going into Tokyo Drift, the Fast franchise was in a little bit of, is it going to continue or is it not going to continue?
Yeah, because let's be honest, a lot of the fans did not like this movie.
Yeah, well,
I did,
they weren't exactly,
and I still do.
And they weren't exactly thrilled with Too Fast, Too Furious. The Fast and the Furious franchise was looking like it might be heading its way to direct-to-DVD for its sequels, until Vin Diesel agreed to the deal to get Riddick back and made the cameo on this. And him cameoing at the end of Tokyo Drift drove the fans of this franchise wild. It was one of the early stingers we ever got, and it made people go see Tokyo Drift, and it reignited the franchise.
What's funny about that is I knew nothing about it going into the theater, but I was digging the soundtrack, and I was actually watching the credits for the soundtrack because I remember who I was with. I remember where I was watching it in Florida. I was on a trip in Florida. And I remember watching it going, man, this music's cool. I'm just going to hang out and watch the credits. All of a sudden, this scene comes up, and it's freaking Vin Diesel. I was like, no way. I started telling everyone that I knew that would be interested in this thing. But still, even a Vin Diesel cameo didn't save the film for a lot of fans.
Yeah, but it did get people talking about the franchise again, which leads us to Fast 4, Fast and Furious, coming out in 2009 in theaters, once again directed by Justin Lin, written by Chris Morgan and Gary Scott Thompson. Heading back to the streets where it all began, two men rejoin two women to blast muscle, Turner, and exotic cars across Los Angeles and floor through the Mexican desert. When a crime brings him back to LA, fugitive ex-con Dom Toretto reignites his feud with Agent Brian O'Connor, but as they are forced to confront a shared enemy, Dom and Brian must give in to an uncertain new trust if they can hope to outmaneuver him. And from convoy heist to precision tunnel crawls across international lines, two men will find the best way to get revenge. Push the limits of what's possible behind the wheel. Now, Kevin, this one in particular, we had a couple of interesting new cast additions as well. We had Tego Coleman as Tego, Don Omar as Santos, Shea Wiggum as Stasiak, Jack Conley as Penning, Laz Alonso as Phoenix, who was the villain in this film, and somebody named Gal Gadot as Giselle. She might have done well for herself.
Yes, Wonder Woman herself makes her. And when I was watching the recent films, I forgot about that because I did before Fast X came out. I went and watched Fast 5 because the villain from that film, which we'll talk about, a lot of the stuff that happens in Fast 10 happens because of the events that happen in Fast 5, and we'll discuss that later. But yeah, Gal Gadot makes her first appearance in the franchise, and I've forgotten where she came from when she shows up on the motorcycle. You know, it's like, oh yeah, there's Fast 4 that came out. But also Don Omar, who plays Santos, he was such a good villain in this.
Yeah, Kevin, I got to be honest with you. This is kind of in my mind the forgotten Fast and Furious film.
It kind of is. Yeah.
It even though it has a lot of importance to it because of certain things with Michelle Rodriguez, it was really the movie that kind of put Brian and Dom on the same page at the end finally.
Yeah.
And really started to reunite them. But I think a lot of people just kind of forget this movie. And there's a reason for that, though, Kevin, because the next film is Fast Five. And this, coming out in 2011, once again directed by Justin Lin, written by the combo of Chris Morgan and Gary Scott Thompson. Former cop Brian O'Connor partners with ex-con Dom Toretto on the opposite side of the law. Since Brian and Maria Toretto broke Dom out of custody, they've blown across many borders to elude authorities. Now backed into a corner in Rio de Janeiro, they must pull one last job in order to gain their freedom. As they assemble the elite team of top racers, the unlikely allies known their only shot of getting out for good means confronting the corrupt businessman who wants them dead. But he's not the only one on their trail. Hard-nosed federal agent Luke Hobbs never misses his target. But when he's assigned to track down Dom and Brian, he and his strike team launch an all-out assault to capture them. But as his men tear through Brazil, Hobbs learns he can't separate the good guys from the bad. Now he must rely on his instincts to corner his prey before someone else runs them down first. Kevin, this was the movie that changed the Fast and Furious franchise into something spectacular.
You know, it's funny. The video copy I have here was when they first started putting DVD and Blu-ray combos together with a digital copy. And now they stick them in Blu-ray cases with the DVD. But this actually is a DVD size case with the Blu-ray in it. And it's the extended edition right there, too. Includes the extended and theatrical and stuff. So, and down here, it says, quote, Richard Corliss from Time says, the best in the series.
And we're going to get to that. But Kevin, Fast Five is an incredibly enjoyable action heist movie. And not only do we have Dom and Brian, we have probably more testosterone in one place than the world can handle because The Rock joined the family of the Fast and the Furious in this film.
Yes, The Rock joins, but also we get coming back. We get the guys from Fast 2 coming back to all help in part of this big heist. And this is when they put the team together. The beginning of the family team, would you say?
I would say so. It's like everything was kind of building to this point because not only do you have Roman Pierce and Tej coming back in this one, you have Santos and Tego coming back as well. Plus, you have the other key addition of Luke Hobbs, played by The Rock, but also Elsa Pataki as Elena, who turns into a very critical character in Fast and Furious lore.
Otherwise known as Mrs. Chris Hemsworth.
Yes, this is true. Even more so, we have another stinger at this film that really helps set up what is to come in the world of the Fast and Furious. Because after the credits roll, Agent Fuentes, Eva Mendes, returning from Too Fast, Too Furious, comes in with a file to Hobbs' office. He asks if the file contains news on Dom and says he is not interested she says it doesn't. She informs him he should be very interested and asks if he believes in ghosts as she shows a picture of Letty alive. Because in the fourth film, we were led to believe Letty was killed while working a mission for Brian.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So then, Kevin, that leads us to Part 6, Fast and Furious 6, coming out May 24th, 2013. Once again, directed by Justin Lin and written by Chris Morgan and Gary Scott Thompson. Since Dom and Brian's Rio heist toppled the Kingpin's empire and left their crew with $100 million, our heroes have scattered across the globe, but their inability to return home and living forever on the lam have left their lives incomplete. Meanwhile, Hobbs has been tracking an organization of lethally skilled mercenary drivers across 12 countries whose mastermind, played by Luke Evans, is aided by a ruthless second-in-command revealed to be the love Dom thought was dead, Letty. The only way to stop the criminal outfit is to outmatch them at street level, so Hobbs asks Dom to assemble his elite team in London. Payment, full pardons for all of them so they can return home and make their families whole again. So we are continuing the growth of the Dom's unit, family unit per se here, Kevin. But we get Letty Black, but she's a bad guy this time.
Mm-hmm.
And plus a key addition to the cast, Luke Evans as Shaw. But we learn there as we go later on, we realize that the Shaw family is going to be a big player within the Fast and Furious franchise.
Yeah, I don't know if Luke Evans is the key addition to this film because we get teased later that it's Jason Statham.
well, let's get into that. So we do have an end credit scene. After the character credits following the film, we're shown Han's final race from the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. However, we start seeing angles of it from inside a car where a gloved hand is adjusting switches and preparing to move. As in Tokyo Drift, a Mercedes slams into Han's car, but it doesn't kill him outright. The driver of the Mercedes, an unnamed character played by Jason Statham, emerges from his car. Then he pulls the cross necklace seen earlier in the film and also the one from Fast 5 and 4 from his pocket and throws it into the fuel spill, the direction of Han's car. Han's car then explodes from the fuel leak and subsequent engine fire. Jason Statham's character then makes a call saying, Dominic Toretto, you don't know me, you're about to. Yeah, it was Jason Statham, as Matt Clifton would like to say, adding yet another huge powerhouse action film name to the Fast and Furious franchise.
Okay. I have a feeling there was some other important people that were in this one as well. Didn't we get Gina Carano in this movie?
Yeah, but they killed her in this one, so.
Yeah, but this is where they start getting some other big names. But there's also another aspect that this film is kind of important for, not important, but just kind of fun important, is the stakes of the vehicles and what vehicles were being used and how they were being used in this. Now, obviously, we had Fast 5 where they had the heist and they had to pull they had to use the cars and pull out the safe and drag the safe down Rio de Janeiro and destroy a bunch of things. But this one's interesting because Luke, what's his name? Luke
Evans.
Yeah, he had that special car that had like the ramp on it, so he can go at you and you would fly off and crash. But also, this is the movie that started upping the big vehicles. And remember when they said, "There's a tank"? Yeah. Remember they had to go up against a tank, and then they just started getting bigger and bigger vehicles after that.
Yeah. Another important thing in this movie, Gal Gadot's character of Giselle is killed in this movie, which leads to the Han leaving the unit and going back to Tokyo for the events of Tokyo Drift.
Yes, very important. Yes.
So, which brings us to Furious 7, but we got to talk here because this is when reality hit and hit the franchise hard. Before Furious 7 came out, Paul Walker was tragically killed in a car accident. And this broke a lot of hearts, Kevin, and not just a Fast franchise, but Vin Diesel was destroyed by this for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically said, I lost my brother in this.
I remember him going to the crash site the next day where fans were hanging around and him giving a very emotional speech to the fans and how much, he was a brother to him, not just on film, but in real life, And I know he continues to keep an eye on his daughter, Meadow, going into this film, there's a delay. Obviously, they had to do some reshoots, and they had to have Walker's brother be a stand-in for some scenes as well, if I remember correctly. And I think there was some digital stuff done with his face to add in some scenes and stuff like that as well. I was having flashbacks to The Crow, among other things. But going into this, we were like, well, how are they going to write him off? How are they going to do this?
Well, and we found out because in 2015, Furious 7 came out, directed by James Wan, not Justin Lin, which was the start of Justin Lin kind of, in his own way, stepping away a little bit from the franchise. Still written by Chris Morgan and Gary Scott Thompson. Dominic and his crew thought they'd left the criminal mercenary life behind. They defeated international terrorist Owen Shaw and went their separate ways. But now Shaw's brother, Deckard Shaw, is out killing the crew one by one for revenge. Worse, a Somalian terrorist named Jacarede and a shady government official called Mr. Nobody are both competing to steal a computer terrorism program called God's Eye that can turn any technological device into a weapon. Toretto must reconvene with his team to stop Shaw and retrieve the God's Eye program while caught in a power struggle between the terrorists and the United States government. So, obviously, some key additions to this cast included full-on Jason Statham for his first full Fast and Furious movie. We saw Kurt Russell make his debut into the series as Mr. Nobody. John Brotherton as Shepard, who was an assistant to Mr. Kurt Russell and Mr. Nobody. And the beautiful Nathaniel Emmanuel as Ramsey, the hacker who created the God's Eye.
I think it's Nathalia.
Nathalia. Okay.
Yeah, Nathalia. Yes.
So I love this movie, Kevin. I think I think if you were to ask a lot of people, they wish this is where the franchise would have ended. I think people were very happy because you had a happy ending for the Brian character. It felt like a very tribute and emotional farewell to Paul Walker, and they handled it beautifully. And it just felt like it was a good wrapping up point. Quick note to you, Ronda Rousey was also in this film, continuing the trend of women from MMA to fight Michelle Rodriguez, and Michelle Rodriguez kicking their butt in the film. But
yeah,
this is probably the most emotional film of this series, Kevin. What were your feelings on Fast 7?
Well, first of all, as silly it may have seemed or impossible it may have seemed, I gotta say one of the coolest action scenes throughout the entire series of crashing from one high rise
in Dubai,
in Abu Dhabi.
I mean Abu Dhabi, yeah.
To another one, I just thought was awesome.
Yes, that was amazing.
Yeah, I just thought that was really, really cool. And the fact that Paul Walker got to be part of those action scenes, I thought was great. But yeah, I was happy with the way they decided to kind of let him drive away and live his life, and that's how they write off his character. The whole thing with Jason Statham I thought was cool as well. I'm glad they brought him in, but as sad as it was, I personally as a fan was not ready to let the franchise go. And this was at the time that I kept telling people, because of how emotional this film was and how, some of the stunts are becoming a little more extravagant, maybe a little unbelievable, what have you. We can touch on that if you want. But I was especially after 5, definitely 6, that after 7, I was going, you know what? If they keep making these, I will keep going, no matter how ridiculous they are. I made that promise to myself around this time.
Well, while there was no singer in this for obvious reasons, before the credits, there was a title card that read "For Paul," dedicating the film to Paul Walker. That leads us to 2017, Fast 8, The Fate of the Furious, directed by F. Gary Gary. So he was a late addition as a director in this, and you could tell. Again, written by Gary Scott Thompson and Chris Morgan. Now that Dominic Toretto and Letty Ortiz are on their honeymoon and Brian and Mia have retired from the game and the rest of the crew have been exonerated, the globetrotting team has found a semblance of a normal life. But when a mysterious woman seduces Dom into the world of crime, he can't seem to escape. In a betrayal of those closest to him, they will face the trials that will test them as never before. From the shores of Cuba and the streets of New York City to the icy plains of the Arctic Barents Sea, the elite force will crisscross the globe to stop anarchists from unleashing chaos on the world stage and to bring home the man who made them a family. We got some big names joining the family in this movie, Kevin. Specifically, Charlize Theron as Cypher, Scott Eastwood as the lovable little nobody.
Yep.
And in my opinion, one of the greatest adds to this franchise, the exquisite Dame Helen Mirren as Queenie, who she was actually uncredited in this film, but she's the matriarch of the Shaw family.
Yes, she was.
Now, I got to say, I got to give Charlize Theron, who is coming off Oscar performances, to join this and be such a fun character wearing dreadlocks, being just pure evil in this film, Kevin.
Yeah, it was fun to see her do some villainy, of course, after, Mad Max Fury Road and a bunch of other movies she's done. It was good to see her as a villain. And director F. Gary Gray, he's I like the fact that he got in on this franchise because he's had a long history of stuff. He's the director of The Italian Job, going back to Friday, The Negotiator, Set It Off. So I was glad to see him get in on it as well. But Kyle, also too, they stepped up the game when it came to vehicles being used.
Oh yeah, they did. But before we get into vehicles, Kevin, I do have to say the most villainous act in Fast and Furious happened in this film, because our boy Tormund from Game of Thrones was in this film. He was great in this film, but we saw just how evil Charlize Theron was as Elena, who had given birth to Dom's son, Brian was killed right in front of Dom in the most evils of ways possible and just completely cold-blooded. It's, in my opinion, still to this day, the most evil act in the franchise history.
It is. It was cold-blooded. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, but tell us about the vehicles, Kevin, because we had some interesting things in this movie.
Submarine, baby. A freaking submarine. Now, okay, so let's. You could go back to the last episode or last movie, by the way. First of all, let's say hi to Ghostbusters Quick Response Unit. Greetings, programs. Good to see you guys. Good to see you. Good to see you. This is when the Fast and Furious team is becoming a special forces team.
Mm-hmm. They're becoming superheroes. Come on, Kevin. They're being
superheroes. They're all efficient in guns, and they're very good at brawling and fighting and stuff. So, this is where I just kind of went, you know what? Fine. I'm going to go with it. They know all the guns. They know all the fighting, and they get to experience all the big toys and weapons that most smaller countries probably don't even get their hands on. So I thought it was funny, but I'm going with it. And so, yeah, we got the submarine in this one.
This leads us to 2019, Kevin, and it's something a little different. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw, directed by David Leitch. The Rock and Jason Statham, kind of frenemies at this point, and basically, Lawman Luke Hobbs and outcast Deckard Shaw form an unlikely alliance when a cybergenetically enhanced villain threatens the future of humanity. Idris Elba is Brixton. Eliza Gonzalez is Madam M. Ryan Reynolds, Eton director, as Champ Nightingale. And Vanessa Kirby coming out as Hattie Shaw, Deckard Shaw's sister. Primo. I loved her character. I want her character to come back in this franchise. I am hoping she will. This movie was just fun, Kevin. It was absolutely, utterly ridiculous, but it was so much fun.
It is. And seeing these two mega action stars together and work together was great. And Idris Elba was good as a villain. When it came to the technology that he was using and stuff, was kind of like when we went to go see G.I. Joe in 2009 and they had this kind of future tech, and you're like, okay, I'll just roll with it. That's fine. But it was good to see these guys fight together. And by the way, Vanessa Kirby also does a podcast called True Spies. In the first few episodes, I think up to 20 or whatever, it was, I think it was her, and then I'm forgetting her from Agent Carter from Marvel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She does the voice as well. But anyway, it was kind of cool to hear Vanessa Kirby do that as well. But check it out; it's a good podcast. But yeah, I kind of liked the idea of Hobbs and Shaw, and the director David Leitch, by the way, is the co-creator and kind of like the co-director, although not technically listed as, from the original John Wick series, Kyle. Mm-hmm. Based on a lot of stuff that he's written, and he had a hand in creating the John Wick world. So now he's going out on his own and doing action films. I think he did Deadpool 2, if I remember correctly.
I think you're correct there. So
yeah,
a couple of fun stingers in this. Ryan Reynolds, CIA agent character, shown fighting bad guys while trying to talk Hobbs into joining him on another mission to find a new virus. In the second teaser stinger, Hobbs makes a call to Shaw to repay a debt, saying that it's huge anus, which is the same joke Shaw did to Hobbs during a scene earlier in the movie with Mike Oxmall. And then finally, in the post-credit stinger, Locke freaks out thinking he's bleeding to death after hitting somebody with a brick, but it turns out it's not his blood. So
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, it was like after at the very end of the credits.
What was that signifying? Do you remember?
I think it was just Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds, having fun.
Okay.
Which leads us into 2021, Fast 9, The Fast Saga, directed by a returning Justin Lin. Now, this is an important movie, Kevin, because this was one of the first movies in theaters after theaters had reopened from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people flocked to this movie, I think, just because of that reason. It was written by Daniel Casey and Justin Lin. Dom and his crew must take on an international terrorist who turns out to be Dom and Mia's estranged brother. Some interesting cast ads here. Obviously, John Cena as Jacob Toretto, Anna Sawali as Ellie, who looks to be like Han's kind of adopted daughter, or Elle is Han's adopted, and our good buddy Michael Rooker playing a character by the name of Buddy in this film, who has a history with the Toretto family. At the end of the film, we have a stinger. A hooded figure is shown hitting a punching bag. When the figure removes his hood, it is revealed to be Deckard Shaw. He opens the punching bag and to reveal someone who was in there he was getting information out of through a very interesting means of interrogation, and also some information regarding a new mission. The scene ends with a knock on the door where Han shows up again, because in Fast 5, Kevin, Han's alive, my friend.
Yes.
And I remember when the trailers came out and you and I saw this, we were like, mind blown. What? We need to know how this one happened.
Yeah. I was happy to get that in. I'll be perfectly honest. I have not rewatched this before seeing Fast 10. So the moments in this film are a little blurry for me. I remember John Cena and the stuff that was kind of going on there a little bit, but I can't remember all of this film, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'll be honest.
I wanted to rewatch it before Fast 10, but I just didn't make the time for it.
I rewatched it Wednesday night, and I'm gonna say this. I think this is a movie that a lot of people kind of saw through rose-colored glasses the first time, because they were just glad to be back in a movie theater and have like something familiar there. This movie has a lot of flaws, though. One of the biggest flaws in it is John Cena plays things you don't make John Cena serious. We have seen in too many things where you need to let John Cena have fun with his character, and they just don't allow him to do it in this film. And it's really a detriment to that, because especially after watching Fast 10, and John Cena had some fun as his character, and we'll get to that. But Kevin, it all leads up to this weekend, 2013, directed by Louis Lederer. Fast 10, The End of the Road begins. Now, guys, before we go any further with this, you gotta bear with me, because spoiler warnings. We are going to be talking about what we saw just last night in Fast 10. We're going to try to keep it on the download some, but we have to discuss certain aspects of this. Yes, Kevin.
Louis Leterrier, I want to give you a little background here. He's a French film director and producer. He directed the first 2 Transporter films.
You are correct.
So, yes. So he has some experience with, a certain Transporter now in the Fast franchise. And so he knows a little bit about doing, fast cars and stunts like that. He also is the director of The Incredible Hulk, Clash of the Titans, and Now You See Me, with some of the more known ones, and also The Takedown, and he did a little bit of The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance as well. So I just want to give a shout out to, in case people didn't recognize that name, dude knows how to do some action.
Now, I'm going to try to not go into a bunch of plot. I have a pretty big explanation of the plot, but I'm going to hold off and try not to go into too many spoilers here. But basically, the premise of Fast 10 is, it goes back to, as Kevin said earlier, to events in Fast 5 with the death of the main villain in Fast 5. It turns out his son survived, and his son is played by Jason Momoa as the character Dante. In this film, we have enemies uniting against a common cause. We have twists and turns. We have several new characters in this film, Kevin, and I got to go through them because we had some very interesting characters come into play here. Obviously, Jason Momoa as Dante, who, Kevin, come on, we both said it. And the reviews have said it too. He is the highlight of this film.
He's having fun, that's for sure.
I mean, this is Jason Momoa turned up to about 1,000 in this film, and it's delightful. Brie Larson as Tess, who happens to be related to a certain Mr. Nobody.
Yep. Her father, right? If I remember correctly.
Yep, her father.
Yes.
Our good friend Alan Ritchson of course, Jack Reacher himself as
Yep.
Ames, who has taken over the agency. But there might be more to him than meets the eye. And he was jacked in this film. He was giving off like some rock level.
Yes.
I'm pumped. Daniela Melchior as Isabel, who has a tie to another important Fast and Furious character. She is the sister of Elena, which makes her little Brian's aunt. And of course, little Brian being the son of Dom and Elena, who is a big factor in this movie, played by Leo Abello Perry. And Kevin, one of the cool moments of this film, we kind of get to meet probably what is at this point the patriarch of the Toretto family, Abuelita, played by the amazing and legendary Rita Romero.
Yeah, that was really cool.
So,
I want to give a shout out to Joaquim de Amelia, who played Hernan Reyes. He came back to film these flashback scenes because he was the main villain in Fast 5. And I've seen him as a villain in a lot of other movies and TV series, and I just love him. I think he's great. I think he was also in one of the Harrison Ford Clear and Present Danger films or something like that. He played a bad guy in that. But I just love him, and I'm glad that they had him back to reprise his character.
I agree, and he always plays he's one of those actors, when you see him, he's playing a bad guy, but he's going to be playing the very cool bad guy.
Yep.
And it's just, but we have one more spoiler warning, Kevin.
Yes, we do.
There is a post-credit scene, something that many of the fans of the franchise never thought they would see. And we'll see you later, Ghostbusters Quick Response Unit. Dwayne Johnson is back as Luke Hobbs, because not only was Dante, played by Jason Momoa, looking for revenge and caused suffering to Dominic Toretto, he also had another target, the man who pulled the trigger that killed his father, one Luke Hobbs.
Yep.
And you know where to find me, you son of a bitch. So, Kevin, let's go into a little buy it, stream it, or unsee it. Let's get your thoughts on Fast X.
Well, first of all, wait, real quick. I don't see in the notes here, Kyle, that there was another reveal at the end of the film. Are we getting to that?
We are going to get to that, but I want to save that one because
okay.
I have a story with that one.
Okay.
But give me your initial thoughts on Fast X.
Well, I wanted to take my dad. I'm not going to be around on Father's Day. And we haven't been to a film in a while. And my wife, Erin, is here, and she wanted to get some gardening done. And so she's like, why don't you take your dad? Like, yeah, that's a good idea. And so I took my dad to go see it. And, my dad doesn't know the franchise in and out like I do. He's seen most of them more casually than anything else. And he loved it. He thought it was great. He said he had never seen a movie with so much action before. And it just kept going and going and going. I myself was pretty much, when it came to the action, it was pretty much what I was expecting about, that there was going to be a lot of it and a lot of action that would seem like, can that really do that? But I've gotten to the point to where I don't care. I want to have moments with these characters. I want to see fast cars doing awesome things. I want to see cars blowing up. I want to see a lot of action in and around cars. And I want to see how these new characters and older characters of this larger Toretto family, how they're going to work together. That's part of it, working together. And you get to see them kind of split up a little bit. And kind of take on these little separate missions to get to the end goal here, and how previous enemies are now kind of working with them. The whole, the enemy of my enemy is my friend is the type of situation that's happening in this movie, and how that was going to get to it. And I had heard that there was going to be more films, but I didn't know like how that they were going to tease into it. Overall, I enjoyed it, Kyle. I go into these movies with kind of a low expectation, just to have fun in a popcorn film, and to search out these character moments in this movie. So I don't look at it going, I don't like this movie because what they just did is impossible. I don't do that anymore. They keep making them, I'll keep going, and they are a must see in the theater.
I'll agree with you because of the level of stunts and that work they do. It's definitely a must see in the theater to see that on the big screen. I will say this. I'm with you. You go to these movies, you turn your brain off, you throw the laws of physics out the window, a lot of things, and you go for the ride. And especially if you've been invested in this franchise since the beginning, you're there for the characters. That's why you're there. You know that half the stuff they've done in these, especially in these last few films, is just beyond ridiculous, and you just roll with it and accept it. But I'm going to say this in the aspect of this is definitely not the best movie in the franchise by a long shot. This movie is a little bit choppy because it's just bouncing around in so many different directions. I'll be the first to admit I want a closer look at the cars they use in this movie, Kevin, because I feel like there's a stamp somewhere made in Wakanda because of how the abuse they take in this film.
Kyle, you can't. I know you're joking, but for those of you that feel the same way, you can't do that. You got to.
No, I know.
And the question I kind of came out with is like, does Don have a souped up Charger factory where he just has them everywhere? Is it the same car that he keeps getting repaired over and over again? Because he always has that Charger, that black Charger that has the NOS and a bunch of tricks around it. It's kind of like becoming his James Bond vehicle, but I don't have a problem with it.
No, he has a garage in every garage around the world, in every city. There's a special garage with a Charger for Dom.
I think that what they probably should have done, like after Fast 5 or something, is let it reveal in a flashback or something that he was taking physics in high school, or if he did complete any college courses, one of them was physics.
Yeah. Or he took a physics class while he was in prison.
Yeah.
There, but
I do recommend it to give it a buy it, stream it, and see it. You got to see this in the theater. The sound, the spectacle. It is a theater film, and I will be buying this. Just as you see, I've been holding up the DVD or Blu-ray copies of these films. It will be part of my library.
So there is one moment in this film we haven't discussed yet, and we haven't discussed.
Do we need to do another spoiler warning?
You're probably right. I should do a quick one of these because this is a major spoiler for this film, and I had heard the rumors of this for a few weeks now that this was
what?
Yep.
You heard the rumors? I heard no rumors. I heard no rumors.
When this moment happens in the film, most of the theater I was in, and I would say it was about 3/4 full because it was a Thursday night, and it wasn't an elite theater. It was just a theater down the street from me. But most of the guys in the film lost their minds because it is revealed at the end of this film that Giselle Gal Gadot is alive and working with Cypher.
Charlize Theron's character, yes.
Yeah. First and foremost, how hot was she when she came up out of the sub?
A submarine, Kyle, out of Antarctica, where the black site prison was that Letty and Cypher were being held at. They escape, and they go to this area in the ice, and boom, submarine comes out again, and there is Gal Gadot as Giselle saying, hi.
I cannot wait to see how they explain this. This is going to be crazy. And one other thing you need to add, Kevin, this might have the greatest women's fight scene in it in movie history because Charlize Theron and Michelle Rodriguez throw down, and I've read where they filmed that fight scene without the director present.
Interesting. Yeah.
They were like, let's just do it, and they did it.
Wow. Yeah, that was a good fight scene. That was good. I really enjoyed that.
So that wraps up our look at the movies of the franchise, but we got some questions to answer, Kevin. So we've been through the experience of the Fast and Furious films. So let's answer some questions then. Kevin, key franchise questions. First and foremost, what do you feel was the apex film so far of the Fast and Furious franchise?
Can I pull the video out?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. The apex by far is Fast 5, in my opinion.
I am in 100% agreement.
Yep. And one of the best action movies of all time. And it's not how much action is in it, it's how the action was done. And the fact that it was combined as a heist film, and also brought together the main core of what would become the family, so to speak, and introduced, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Hobbs, who looked badass in this film. And in my opinion, is probably one of Dwayne Johnson's, if not the best role he has done in a film. I challenge people to say otherwise. What other film they think he is a better character than Hobbs in this film?
I agree with you 100%. Fast Five changed this franchise from what it was into what it has become. In my personal opinion, I agree with you about what you say about The Rock. I am still a big fan of his character Beck from The Rundown, but I think that character just never got developed enough. That should have been a franchise character for The Rock, like Luke Hobbs turned into. Fast Five is an amazing action film. It's a great heist film. It's got incredible character moments and just an absolutely fun and wonderful movie. But I'm going to say a close runner-up for me is Fast 7, Kevin.
Fast 7? Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a well-done film. The emotional aspect it carries. I agree with you when they driving the car between the two high rises is just an incredible looking scene. But I think the apex of the franchise is Fast Five, without a doubt.
But I would agree with you. I like this. I like 6 when Letty comes back into the picture.
Yeah.
And I think Luke is a good villain in this. And there's some certain concepts about this film that I like, and the fact that they also get a chance to go home after this too.
So we just talked about the apex of the franchise. Kevin, which film is the low point of the franchise, or the least memorable of the franchise?
I don't know if it's least memorable, but I'm gonna have to go with Too Fast, Too Furious. The second one. That's the one here. And I did want to mention something interesting. I think it's in the special features of this one. I can't remember. You can find them on YouTube, but you get a little video of Paul Walker making his trip east when he's trying to escape the first film, and because he's on the run basically. The fact that it has its moments, but I don't like the direction that this. I don't think they needed to go to Florida. I see why they did. Florida's a cool place. I don't know. It just didn't. There was just something other than Dom missing. There was just something missing from this. It had its cool character moments and stuff, but for me, I think that this is the franchise low point. A lot of people will say, that it's Tokyo Drift, but I'll talk about that next.
Yeah. I would definitely say for me, the low point, it's close. It's either Fast 4 because it's just not a memorable film to me in the franchise, but I think it's got to be Fast 9 for me. I think Fast 9 just falls a little bit flat. They don't use John Cena properly in that film. Kevin, we talked about him in Fast 9. Fast 10, he is so much more enjoyable. He's playing it up a little bit more loose and being more of himself as John Cena and having fun with the character as well. I think he was just too uptight. I don't think the plot really worked that great for Fast 9. For me, I think that one for me is probably the low point, the low point of the films in the franchise for me.
Good call.
But, the next question I have for you, Kevin, is, and this is going to be an interesting one. When did the Fast and Furious franchise jump the shark?
Hold on. We have to ask the question first. I think this question should be rephrased is, did this franchise jump the shark? Yes or no? If it did, when?
Okay, so do you clarify? So for you, has it jumped the shark? And if it did, when?
It depends on your perspective. I know some fans will say, yes, it did. And maybe that probably happened after like Fate of the Furious, when you didn't have Paul Walker anymore and the submarine came into play. Some people think Hobbs and Shaw did it as well. And maybe even F9, because I'm a huge fan of this series, and I expect the ridiculous. I'm not going to say that it's jumped the shark because the way that they're bringing all these people together and doing these little end scenes and stuff like that, as a fan of this thing, I don't think it has. But if you held a cross to my head, if you held a gun to my head, whatever it is, maybe the ninth one with John Cena, maybe jumped it if you had to say it, because I didn't go back and rewatch it to begin. I went back and watched Fast 5, before Fast 10 came out. So what do you think?
Okay,
first of all, did it jump the shark?
This franchise has jumped the shark, but this franchise has jumped the shark in the good way. This franchise has jumped the shark. It knows it's jumped the shark, and it's got so much testosterone and nos in it that it fishes the shark out of the water, puts it back in place, and jumps it again.
So what you're saying is this is the good part of Sharknado, is jumping the Sharknado.
Yeah, basically, that's basically what they did. They jumped the Sharknado in this thing, because it's one of the things that I've noticed, and I think it started with Fast 9. They realized it, and they're kind of in on the joke, and I feel like that is a big part of Fast 10 too. That they're in on, at this point, they're in on what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They're in on it, and they go with it. But I think they jumped this. I think the movie officially jumped the shark in Fast 8 with the submarine. I think that was like pushing it. And in Fast 9, when you take a Pontiac Fiero into space to go to disable a satellite and then dock it with the International Space Station, we've jumped the shark.
Did it jump the shark because they went into space, or did they jump the shark because it was a Pontiac Fiero?
Both. And plus, it's always been the joke that.
Or hold on. Is it that they know that they're being ridiculous, so they decide to use a Pontiac Fiero?
I'm sure that's a part of it. But the joke has always been the franchise will end when they go into space. So I think that's where it is. But again, this is a franchise it's a good jumping the shark. It realizes what it's done, and it's riding the shark into the shore. So I can let it go with that. But okay, which I'm going to switch the questions up here, because I'm going to ask Kevin, because we've talked about jumping the shark. What is your personal favorite, and which one is your guilty pleasure in this franchise?
My personal favorite is definitely Fast 5. That is a complete action film. This is a film you could actually. It's a standalone film, I believe. You don't have to know all the stuff that happens in this, because they kind of say, they kind of bring people up to speed a little bit, which I like, and there's a great introduction with when they start reuniting all the characters in this. So it's a standalone film when you think about it. And that one is my personal favorite. My guilty pleasure, because everyone else seems to hate it except for us, is definitely Tokyo Drift. I can rewatch Tokyo Drift all the time. I love that it takes place in Japan. Han is a great character in this. Even DK, he's a good villain in this. It's just, I love the concept, and the fact that you can bring in the Japanese mafia as well. I love it.
We are of the same mind. Fast 5 is my favorite of the franchise. It's the best of the franchise, and it's not even close. Tokyo Drift is definitely the guilty pleasure film for me, but I enjoy Too Fast, Too Furious, because I love the banter between Roman Pierce and Brian.
Okay.
I think those two have a great banter, and you throw in Ludacris in that mix too, and I think that makes that movie fun. Plus, I'll look at Eva Mendes all day long. But yeah, Tokyo Drift by far is the guilty pleasure. And Han is amazing. I even like Lucas Black in that film, and I know a lot of people are not a fan of him, but
no, I do too. I think he's great. Yeah,
I like him. Do enjoy him.
I like him because he's kind of a little anti-Brian a little bit. He's a little bit more cockier, and he's got a certain thing about him. And I'm a fan of Lucas Black, so yeah.
So Kevin, this is where I think things get interesting, because the next question is, who is the heart of the franchise? And I think obviously there's a very obvious answer, but I don't know if that's the correct answer. So I'm curious, who do you think is the heart of the franchise? And you can select more than one person, because I think there's a core to this franchise. But I'm curious.
Can you define what you mean? I think I know where you're getting at, but I'd like you to answer the question first, because I want to know what angle you're coming at this from. Who's the one that's been in the most films, which character you've been attached to more that might not be the Dom or the Letty or the Brian. So I want you to answer this question first, because I want to know what angle you're going at with this, and I want you to clarify. So I'm going to defer to you.
So the heart of the franchise to me is.
By the way, translation. Good question.
For me, the heart of the franchise, it's not necessarily your main character. It's the person who carries the emotional weight of the franchise. And I'm going to say this. Obviously, this is Vin Diesel's franchise. It always has been. But Vin Diesel isn't, in my opinion, the heart of the franchise. He's the foundation of the franchise.
Yeah.
Everything is on his shoulders. But I think there's a couple of people who fall into the category of the heart of the franchise. First and foremost is Paul Walker. Paul Walker is the heart of the Fast and Furious franchise. And I think it's even more obvious as we've had Fast 8, Fast 9, and Fast 10. Him not being there, but the fact that they find a way to include him in every one of these movies, whether you see pictures of him, mentions of him, or make it look like that character is joining them at the end of a film, or which was what they did at the end of Fast 9. He is the heart. He's one of the hearts of the franchise. But I think there's another person who is just as much a part of the heart of the franchise, and it's somebody who isn't on screen, but it's somebody who's behind the scenes, and that is Justin Lin. Justin Lin redefined this franchise, and he made it into something that was beyond what I think anybody thought it could be. And I think he's the reason why the Fast and Furious franchise is this huge franchise worldwide now, because of his vision as the director. He helped write of the Fast 10, even though he didn't direct it. I think Justin Lin is just as much a part of the blood and heartbeating of the Fast and Furious franchise as Paul Walker was, with Vin Diesel being the foundation. And I think you have to throw a little bit of Michelle Rodriguez in there too, because I think that people, when she was gone, people missed her, and there's a reason why they brought her back.
Yeah. Those are, I don't know if I can top that, Kyle, and I get where you're getting at, and I'm glad you gave a shot to Justin Lin there, and it made me think about, the heart of the franchise is probably the people behind the screen too. When you think about it, all the stunt drivers, all the visual effect artists that have to, maybe carry a little bit of a load for some of the visual effects and the car stunts, but you got real stunt drivers out there doing a lot of this stuff where risking their lives. And the cast and crew making the spectacle that we keep coming to. But, when it comes down to it, it is, this whole thing about, the Toretto family, the extended family, and that the family aspect itself is the heart of this series. And they're hitting you over the head with it, and we've joked about it, that, it's all about family, but even though it's easy to poke fun at, knowing that your family has your back, but also that adopted family can be part of the family as well. Someone that shows loyalty to you and that has got your back, and that people that you fought with are now fighting with you side by side. Yes, it's in a way it's kind of predictable, and it's like, oh, okay, is this villain going to be the villain this movie, but then be good next one? I don't care about that. It's predictable. If it happens, fine. But I kind of like seeing the turn, even if it's predictable. I love seeing the bad guy turn and then help out. It's just one of those movie tropes that they've embraced, and they're not embarrassed about it. But it makes the family bigger, and it makes the family stronger. If I had to bring it down to a certain character too, I would definitely say Brian was the heart of this, because we're kind of going at it through the original movie through his eyes, because he is diving into this world as the undercover police officer, and he's bringing us with him, and Brian, Paul Walker's character just had a certain charm about him, the way that he smiled, the way that he laughed, and the way that he joked. And, and he was, and he's also one of the better actors too, to be honest with you. So, that's my answer, but I'm also going to give a shout out to Han.
Yeah, well,
because
justice
of what
for Han.
Justice for On, just because of what that character has gone through, and the fact that I have been a Tokyo Drift supporter since day one. I love that film. It's still one of my favorites, and I will go back and rewatch that in a hot minute because of him. He's the reason that makes that film, you know. And he's just so captivating and cool, and the fact that he has a backstory, and that I became more emotionally attached to him, knowing that the movies I was watching afterwards, that this took place before Tokyo Drift, that he was going to die. You know, I'm like, no. And then when they brought him back and they showed what happened, I'm like, oh, this is cool. And the fact that we had an answer to his almost death, you know, with Jason Statham, you know, I don't care if it was ridiculous. I loved it. It was great. But yeah, so Paul Walker for character, but I think the heart of the family is the theme of family. So,
one last question, Kevin. As far as this franchise go, obviously we know this franchise is coming to an end. We don't know quite how many movies, because Vin Diesel said some interesting things over the weekend that he sees the finale as a trilogy of films. Somebody I know on Facebook said he just wants it to get to Fast Triple X so he can play he can play Dominic Toretto and Xander Cage in the same film. I think it all depends on how this film does. Obviously, there's going to be a sequel. This film does end on a cliffhanger. I don't know if we'll get 3 more films or if we just have one more in our pocket. But Kevin, I'm going to ask you: is it time for the Fast franchise to end? Does it need to be rebooted, or is it just time to close it and let it lie for a while?
I think what,
or keep it going. Do me.
I'm fine with it. The chapter of the main cast shutting down and ending, but it's such a fun concept that you have this family that's now an extended family, and you can do shoot off movies, like Hobbs and Shaw with almost any of these characters now, and then you got the young Brian character, the Dom's son, now getting the best tutelage of cars from anyone, that he could do his own franchise when he gets older, So as far as I'm going, you know what? I don't care. Just keep him going. Whatever iteration comes out, whether it's a spinoff or what have you. If they decide to retire the current cast and then wait several years and then reboot it with, Dom's son or something, I just don't want to see a reboot. Them trying to retell this story with new characters trying to play these characters. Like, don't go back and remake these. If you want to take a break with them for a while, that's fine. But I would love to see what happens in the future of car racing. I would like them to ground it a little bit more next time, after we get done with Fast XX and Fast X Triple X or whatever they're going to have. I want them to kind of bring it down more to the culture of car racing. Yes, they've gone big vehicles, they've gone to space. Whether it's a cannonball run type of situation, cross country thing that has to happen, it's the cars that bring us in, and then you make us stay with the family.
I think it is time for the Fast and Furious franchise as it is to end. I just don't see where else they can go right now. But I think in an ending, the door is open for a return to the franchise a few years from now, in the aspect of you could bring in actors to play not only Dom's son, but Brian's kids as well, Brian and Mia's kids, and kind of relaunch the franchise, like you said, more grounded, maybe some kind of a cross-country race or something like that. As we see this next generation of Torettos and O'Connors kind of establish their place and become the next generation of Fast and Furious. And I think that would be a fun direction to see where it would go. Obviously, this franchise is just huge, and it'll be interesting to see where it plays out. But Kevin, as we get ready to close out this franchise, we just got one thing left to do. We got our Coronas, we've got our barbecue. It's time to rate the franchise. So Kevin, how are you rating on our rating scale the Fast and the Furious franchise?
I need you to remind the people what the rating scale is.
Okay, well, the rating scale is as follows. It is either a tent pole, which means it's a massive franchise, one that could carry a studio if need be. I will see it in the theater, meaning you like it, it's a popular franchise. You will definitely catch it in the theater, but it might not be something you're going to make an opening night midnight showing to right out of the gate. I can wait to stream it. Means you like it, but you know what? You're fine watching it at home when it hits your whatever streaming platform it's going to be on. Not my thing, but there's something for everybody. You may not like it, but there's definitely a cult following for some kind of following for it that keeps it going. And finally, there's just what they made more than one. How did we not? Shouldn't we have killed it before it spawned?
I wonder if we'll cover one of those franchises.
I think we might have. We might have to at some point. But Kevin, how would you rank the Fast and the Furious franchise?
Obviously, it's a tentpole franchise. It is, and no matter how silly they become, people are going to this and seeing it. And I think more people are relaxing on the physics of it and going, no, that can't happen. But you want to see what happens next, because this franchise has done something amazing. It has brought all these characters in from different movies, supposedly killed a few off, bringing them back, new villains, and you want to see who's next. And you want to wait for that end stinger scene to see what happens, So it's definitely a tentpole franchise. And of course, combined with I will always see these in the theater. You have to. These are made for the big screen. And I was happy to see this on the big screen with my dad, just enjoying a fun popcorn action film. And tentpole franchise is a studio that can be built on. Yes. Hopefully they will continue it after the Dom Pareto, maybe do the sons or daughters or what have you. So that's where I stand with it. I will not apologize for this series. I love it dearly, and I will continue to go.
I agree with you 100%. This is a tentpole franchise. I think if you were to come out of Tokyo Drift, you would have never, ever thought that. But that goes to the credit of the amazing work of Justin Lin and changing a franchise on the fly into something that is just absolutely amazing. This is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Whether you like it or not, it is a tentpole. It is one of what I consider one of the top 5 tentpole franchises in the world right now, and it might be, as far as a worldwide thing, the top 3 of franchises in the world right now. And
yeah, a lot of people have to realize how huge these movies are celebrated in other countries, and. Yeah. What I like about that is they're kind of getting a Michael Bay treatment, where Michael Bay gets all of the help from the military organization to help him with his films. Wherever they're filming, they get the red carpet thrown out for them, and they get all the help in all the location scenes, because they always showcase these cities in these awesome ways, and then terrible stuff happens there, So the world premiere was in Rome, as you know, watching Fast X. A huge major action scene happens at the beginning of this film there in Rome.
Well, I think that is going to sum it up. It is a tentpole franchise. It is a fun franchise. It has its ups, it has its downs, but it's one of the best franchises we've had in Hollywood history. I'm going to call, you know what? I have a name for this franchise too, Kevin. It is the movie soap opera franchise. Yes, and the reason why I say that, because it has more twists and turns in it than a good soap opera would.
You know what? You're absolutely right. that is a good comparison. Yep.
So with that, it is time to get out of this episode of Culture Clash. But before we get out of here, we got a couple of things we need to hype up, because we do fun things around the Fandom Podcast Network. And one of those things, Mr. Reitzel, is what has happening live on the Fandom Podcast YouTube channel on Thursday, May 25th, the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. You, sir, are hosting a live edition of Couch Potato Theater Return of the Jedi.
Yes, I'm really excited for this on the Fandom Podcast Network. Make sure you check in, and more importantly, please contribute, comment, send us your favorite things about Return of the Jedi, when and where you first saw it, and join us while we talk about it live with friends of the Fandom Podcast Network and some special guests as well.
But that's not what else is. There's a lot of other things going on around the Fandom Podcast Network, including releasing today, as we're broadcasting this episode earlier today, Time Warp 1983, the 40th anniversary of these films, part 2. In this one part, Kevin, we only cover the films of April, but there's a reason for that, because you have a couple of special things that happened involving movies that are in this part of the Time Warp for 1983.
Yeah, we're talking about a lot of the stuff that happens in pop culture in between these film drops as well, and during these films when they are dropping. We're also talking about the pop culture from April through June in this. And we're really excited because we touch on some important films like Valley Girl and Flashdance and some other cool stuff as well. So make sure you check that out.
Kevin, speaking of Valley Girl, if you can gag me with a spoon for a minute and hold up a couple of things that you've got, because we will also next week have a tie-in Couch Potato Theater to go with that episode of Time Warp, because you, your lovely wife, and our good friend Jennifer Walk did a Couch Potato Theater on Valley Girl, which will be premiering on the Fandom Podcast Network podcast feed and on our YouTube, a video version on our YouTube channel.
Yes, this DVD right here is signed by the director of Valley Girl, Martha Coolidge. Met her in person, as well as many of the cast members. Aaron and I got a chance to see the 40th anniversary down in Hollywood at the famous Chinese Theater, and we're going to talk about that event and what happened there and discuss this awesome classic, now 40 years old, Valley Girl.
Trust me, it's a great. I just edited it. It's a very good podcast with a lot of information and a lot of emotion. You guys are going to enjoy it. But with that, it's time to get this Culture Clash out of here. If you're watching us live on YouTube, obviously you know where to find the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a share. You can find all of our podcasts on fpnet.podbean.com or on any of the major podcast catchers out there, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Of course, too, you can find myself, Kyle, on social media at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Of course, you can find me on Facebook as well. And I'm actually on TikTok. I need to put more stuff on there, though.
There you go. Of course, you can find the Fandom Podcast Network on our Facebook page, Fandom Podcast Network. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network or on Twitter at FanPod Network. Kevin, you're going to get ready to go to Australia, so I'm going to be trying to come up with some ideas to do while you're on vacation. I'm going to say this. We are going to do another franchise episode very soon. For sure planned, Kevin. I'm going to have a mission for you, but just know it might self-destruct.
I'm going to try and check in. Maybe we can do a pod while I'm in Australia. So I'll take my computer with me. We'll see what we can do.
Bring in some of those. But in the meantime, Kevin, can you go pop some NOS? Because I'm running out of Coronas and barbecue chicken back here. I need you to make a grocery run.
I'll make a fast and furious grocery run just for you, sir.
Yeah, we need those Coronas. No, that's important. But thanks, everybody. We know this was a long episode, but this was something new. We had a lot of fun with it. As always, remember, respect each other. And as we say around here, for sure, like gag me with a spoon, but make sure you enjoy your fandom. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time on the Culture Clash.